afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Council Work Session of February 9th. Ms. McKay, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Williams.
Here.
Ms. Ramsey.
Here.
Mayor Pons.
Here.
Vice Mayor Dent.
Here.
Ms. Kernshire.
Here.
Okay. Leads us now into items for City Council meeting on February 12th. Council preview, Mr. Trivette.
Yes, we have two items on the agenda for background presentations and discussion. The first will be an update from Colonial Behavioral Health, and then the second will be the presentation of the outside agency funding recommendations to help inform the upcoming budget. Under new business, we will have a resolution to amend the CIP to help us accomplish a repair that's needed out at Quarter Path Recreation Center. And then a memorandum of agreement with the state to operate a new bus line that'll go from Virginia Beach to Harrisonburg, I believe, and then we'll have closed session.
Okay, good. Thank you. Any questions for the city manager? All right, takes us now to public comments, which is an opportunity for anybody in the audience to come forward. I have a speaker's card. He wants to speak at open forum, but Mr. Wilson, if you'd like to come now or wait. It's up to you. Welcome, sir.
Robert Wilson, 22 The Palisades. With respect to the preview for Thursday's meeting, I would note that I saw in the financial report that the city paid the HTRFA $5 million. I haven't seen any authorization by the city council for that payment. Maybe I missed it, but I know it was in the capital budget, but I believe authorization is required by the city council before any actual disbursement is made. So perhaps as part of the financial report that Ms. Dameron on Thursday could clarify that. With respect to today's, I'll just make a quick note. I certainly support the Rent Ready program. As the father of 4 kids that went through college and were subject to off-campus housing, I know there's a lot of challenges for the students when they're dealing with it. I looked at it. I didn't really see whether there was some adjudication process where kids, if they have problems with their landlords, can go through the process or use an intermediary to try to resolve issues that they have with their landlords. So I found with my own children that was an important part of the university programs that they were a part of. And then with respect to the affordable housing, which is a hot topic across the country, one of the things, affordable housing that we're looking at in rezoning and that type of thing is only one dimension of the problem. We have to also, I think, as a community, think, what's the impact of other factors on affordability, and also what's the impact on the infrastructure and the services that the city has to provide and that type of thing. Those are all factors that should be included in your consideration when looking at that program. So thank you today. Appreciate it.
Would anybody else like to come forward? Seeing none, I'll close the public comments and we'll move on to background presentations and discussions. And first is a presentation and discussion of Affordable Housing Initiative in partnership with C&F Bank. Mr. Trivette?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm excited to bring this forward to you today because this has been a target of the City Council now for a long time through several different strategic planning efforts. Most recently, it's in our One Williamsburg goal statement under affordable housing implementation. It's actually the first one, and that is to consider ways to make it easier for first-time home buyers and other buyers to purchase properties within the city through a whole host of financial programs designed to buy down the cost of the home. And over the last few months, we've been working with C&F Bank to do just that. This is our second attempt to find a vehicle with a financial institution as a partner to take this kind of concept from concept to reality. So we're pretty excited today to let C&F come forward and talk to you about what we've been working on and hopefully receive some direction from City Council on what you'd like us to do next. I'm going to go ahead and invite to the microphone, I think over there at the staff table, Natalie Zavanya from C&F Bank.
Welcome, Natalie. Is anybody in the offices at C&F? Looks like everybody's here.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Natalie Zavanya, and I am the Chief Business Development and Information Officer here at C&F Mortgage, which is part of the C&F family. I do want to have my cohorts raise their hand from C&F Bank, C&F Commercial, and our retail team. If you guys want to raise your hands, everyone a part of my team is here in the audience today to answer any questions that maybe I am not the expert on. But today I am presenting, and sorry, how do I get the presentation up? There you go. Thank you so much. Today I am presenting homeownership in the city of Williamsburg. And so what I'm introducing is a proposal to help bridge the gap of affordability for homeownership in the city of Williamsburg. So not necessarily solve the issue, but provide educational initiatives as well as different opportunities for the city of Williamsburg. I want to start by saying that we're really grateful for this opportunity. We've been working with Andrew now since September on several different items, and really the first thing that I want to highlight is we reviewed several of your initiatives already. So I looked at your 2021 Williamsburg Affordable Housing Report as well as your Neighborhood Balance Report, and really the goal of this is to capitalize on the Williamsburg vision of one Williamsburg. So you'll see that throughout this entire proposal, and while you'll see things in here that you might have questions on, the goal of this is to get this to move forward for us to answer that next piece. So I hope you're as excited as I am to dive in. So you'll notice that on these slides there are a lot of words, and the purpose of this is so that it can stand alone on its own if you guys would like to see these slides when I'm not here to be able to present them. But the first thing that I'd like to do is read the what, which is C&F Mortgage is proposing a partnership between C&F, which includes all of our subsidiaries, the City of Williamsburg, and William and Mary to promote homeownership growth within the city of Williamsburg. Now, this isn't final. This is something that we need to continue and propose to William and Mary. But what I want to highlight here is that this is in a nutshell what we're actually trying to accomplish. And next, I'm going to review the who and the what, the why, the how, and then the when. So bear with me as I go through death by PowerPoint. So I said I wasn't going to read the slide. Here I am going to read a slide, and this is the one that I'd like to start with, which is this proposal offers a strategic messaging campaign, an educational component, and a monetary homeownership grant proposal to support the city's affordable housing efforts aimed at not solving the issue immediately outright, but rather reshaping public perception, fostering community understanding, and embracing support for the ongoing improvement related to homeownership. This project serves as an introduction for successful campaigns as well. It starts with the foundation, and it's an omni-channel approach, which means several initiatives: social, print, website, and grassroots business development, which at the end of the day is what we do best here at C&F. We roll up our sleeves, we get involved, and we want to build a relationship so that we can have further opportunities with the city of Williamsburg. So the why. When I met with Doug and Andrew to talk about the biggest factors related to homeownership, there's a lot, but the two key items here are mortgage interest rates and down payment assistance. Interest rates have risen dramatically over the last 5 years. We saw that they went down to 3% in 2020 and 2021. Those years are probably not coming back, and rates are staying around the 6% range. So what can we do to be able to help borrowers from that perspective, as well as down payment assistance? A lot of millennials and people that are even my age and above do not have the down payment resources to be able to purchase a home. So what exactly can we do in this area? And a lot of the grants that are offered aren't able to qualify in the city of Williamsburg, whether it's homeownership, sales prices are too high, or their income is too high. We've seen that when we've looked at other grant proposals in the area. So our proposal offers several opportunities that help address these challenges. Again, not solving outright, but providing solutions and strategies that will make them effective. So, again, we played on the city's vision of one Williamsburg, and we created what we're calling the Williamsburg Way Home. All of these are, this is a proposal. So if we want to change this or things need to be adjusted, we totally can. But the goal here is that all initiatives will fall under a specific branded campaign to promote public understanding, adoption, and implementation. So on this page, I am going to walk through, there are 6 pieces, and I'm going to have a slide for each of these six pieces, but I wanted to give an opportunity to explain the proposal in totality. So Under the Williamsburg Way Home, we are going to talk about a centralized The Williamsburg Way Home campaign, which includes several materials, a centralized landing page, several marketing mediums, and a way for C&F, the City of Williamsburg, and William and Mary to come together under one centralized piece. We're going to have dedicated homeownership liaisons. As you can see, I have individuals in the crowd here that have already committed and are willing to be supporting this program. We have tailored support and free educational materials. As I mentioned, there's a lot of people that might not even qualify to buy a home right now. What are we doing to support those individuals as well? So an educational component is a huge factor in this, which includes a public calendar of educational events, which we're promoting homeownership classes and different availability to be able to structure that borrower to help with budgeting or improving their credit. You will see that we are offering, from a C&F perspective, up to $5,000 in lender credits. And then we are also offering and proposing a down payment opportunity and grant opportunity between the City of Williamsburg and William and Mary. And then finally, we have some additional down payment resources and interest rate relief opportunities that we'll talk about today. So, the first thing that I'd like to highlight is number 1 on that list, which is the centralized Williamsburg Way Home campaign materials, which is linked between C&F, the City of Williamsburg, as well as William and Mary's website, to be able to have one centralized page. This is what my graphic designer put up on a screen. This is not at all the final piece. I just wanted to give you guys a highlight of what this actually could potentially look like. But the goal of this is to have everything in one spot: the key partners, the liaison, the educational materials, the calendar of events, and make sure everyone is fully aware of the deliverables that will be included as part of this. All the messaging, the events, the grants, everything will be listed on this page. The next piece that I'd like to highlight is the dedicated homeownership liaison, and this is where C&F really shines through. Randy Simmons in the crowd here, if you want to raise your hand, Randy. She focuses so much on down payment assistance, grant opportunities. She's served in our Petersburg area. She is absolutely a person that I would rely on to be able to be a support for your community when it comes to credit improvement, budgeting 101, and grant opportunities. So what I'd like to highlight here is a common issue is that people don't even know where to start. They don't know who to ask. And this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to provide a place that if somebody asks up here in this room, at the university, at the city council, or at C&F, where do I go to be able to ask a question or find support? This is where you can go, and they can point them there. And the goal and the purpose of this is to make sure that the dedicated pieces are in there. So on this piece, we're having a dedicated homeownership liaison that can help put an individual into several different buckets. And this is just from our perspective. We can adjust it based on needs. But the not ready to buy, which could be pushing towards educational resources, attend our homeownership class, attend our budgeting 101 class. They need assistance to buy. That's where we're going to push them to the grant piece. That's the big piece of this that we'll highlight towards the latter half of this presentation. And then ready to buy. These are individuals that might not need grant opportunities. Maybe they just need somebody to walk them through the whole process. We're here to do all of that for them. So, tailored support and free educational resources. The benefit here, C&F has already done the work for you. All of this exists. Credit education, budgeting 101, house hunting, all of these different pieces will be structured on this one it's the Williamsburg Way Home centralized landing page to be able to highlight all of the different benefits. And the goal here is that not one employee or not one individual in the city should know all this information. They should just know to push them back to this site, and all of it will exist on that website. So again, we will house this as an easy, seamless way for people to be able to access the resources that they need at their fingertips at all hours and all whatever they need. The public calendar of events, we are proposing between 1 and 2 events per quarter, depending on the city's need or interest, to be able to host some sort of educational homeownership initiative. It could be Homeownership 101, it could be credit education, budgeting. We can bring in different resources to be able to support you. We have successfully hosted events where we've brought 250 people before. We've partnered with churches and places of worship or public entities to be able to bring bodies of people to an area to educate them. So we have several different strategies to be able to host successful initiatives. And with this, I actually just had a person stop me when I was leaving the bank yesterday, and she said, "Hey, when's our next homeownership class?" I didn't have one, right? This is a perfect opportunity for us to say, this is what people want. I think we got away from hosting events, and this is a great opportunity to have people come in and talk and build relationships within the community. The next piece I want to highlight is C&F Mortgage's commitment to this program, which means that as part of this, we are going to offer a direct benefit through closing cost relief, which is a 0.5 point lender credit up to $5,000 per mortgage loan. So that's going to be a piece that we match into this program as part of relationships with the city. Now I'm going to get to the part that requires more information, and I'm happy to answer that. That's why I have Georgia Parisi, our underwriting and risk manager, here in the audience of any questions that you guys have after the fact. But we are proposing 2 grants. One that the city of Williamsburg would offer, and one that the university would offer. The city grant, we talked with Andrew, and this would be utilizing an allotment of, I believe we discussed $900,000, and we'll get to that in the next slide. It would be between $5,000 and $10,000, depending on what the city's interest is, and it can be stacked with other grants. So we are known for stacking several grants. We've seen people get up to $50,000 in grant funds before. So that's the benefit of having your own grant, is that it doesn't necessarily have to be that high. It just needs to show a commitment to be able to support your community. And then from there, we, Randy, and the other loan officers that we have assigned to this can identify other opportunities. With the city's grant, we did talk about it would require a note and deed of trust because it would allow restrictions and repayment policy. So we talked about that other grants had really stringent income requirements or more strict requirements to achieve that grant. We have walked through several different pieces with Andrew that I'm happy to walk through at a later date or show you all of those FAQs as part of this grant. The second one with William and Mary is a grant specifically for faculty and administration, not for students, and it's to be able to offer an additional allocation of funds to employees or individuals that are a part of the university. And so the benefit here is that this can be a true grant, and it helps as many individuals in this area as possible. Again, would require commitment, we would have to discuss with them, and that's just something that I'd like to highlight. Oop, go back. The last piece, not the last piece, yes, the last piece that I'd like to highlight is down payment assistance and interest rate relief. So there's 2 pieces here that I'd like to highlight, that C&F has access to other funds that are not through C&F, they are other DPA organizations that we have a relationship with that we are very comfortable and confident offering, which are several federal home loan bank initiatives, which includes a first-time homebuyer grant up to $17,500, a community partners grant up to $20,000, which is for community partners, so police officers, firefighters, nurses, teachers. The Workforce Housing Plus grant, up to $15,000, which offers more flexibility with income, so people that make a higher income threshold could qualify. And then we have 2 other Virginia housing grant opportunities that we have available. In addition to that, we do have interest rate reduction opportunities through what we consider a 2-1 buy down. The seller can pay to buy down the rate, but the buyer cannot. So that's something that I just wanted to include that up here as an opportunity to include on this site. So what we talked about from a budget allotment, and this is proposed, no commitment, would be $2.7 million, so $900,000 from the city of Williamsburg, $900,000 from William and Mary, and $900,000 from the city foundation. Again, not committed. Today we're discussing just a $900,000 allotment. I want to highlight the when, because I know this looks like a lot, but we've done a lot of the heavy lifting already. So today we're looking for approval. Obviously that's going to be Thursday. Phase 1 is going to be from now through the end of March, which is to develop all the items that I identified today. A lot of them we've started, so we're comfortable getting that done by the end of March, with the anticipation of launching April 1st, which is just the educational, the Williamsburg Way Home messaging campaign, and really getting out into the community to push different educational opportunities and get those dates on the calendar. And then when we hit May, yes, we're going to launch the grant opportunity. So it gives us a full month to be able to push this campaign, and then we start with the grant opportunity in May. I know this can be a little aggressive, but we're happy to be as aggressive or not as aggressive as you'd like us to be. So I'd like to just highlight one more time the who in this, because we do have a lot of commitment from C&F. So we are committed from the mortgage and the bank side. I will be the project owner and managing success of this project. We have some additional individuals on this team. We have Randy Simmons, if you'd like to raise your hand, from a loan officer opportunity. We will have 2 additional loan officers dedicated to this so that Randy is not the only one. We have Georgia Parisi, if you want to raise your hand, Georgia, from a grant support and an underwriting perspective. We have Ben Hendrick, who is not here today, to support from a closing perspective to make sure that loan gets through the process completely. And then from the bank perspective, we have Trudy Mountcastle and Teresa Sporbert from the retail and the deposit side. We have Molly Crawford and Penny Wilt from the Treasury Department and the deposit and budgeting amounts below. And then Cheryl Macy is going to manage our educational pieces. So that's from our side. And then we would determine who would be included from the City of Williamsburg and William and Mary. You'll notice we brought our whole team. We are committed to this. We are committed to rolling up our sleeves and making sure that this is a successful initiative. So I want to say thank you so much for your time, and I'm available for questions.
Well, thank you, Natalie. That very impressive. I really applaud you and Bill for bringing this opportunity to the city in a unique branded manner. As you know from reading all of our studies, housing and home ownership is a considerable consideration for us. It's very easy to have rentals, but it's getting even more difficult to bring people into the city for home ownership, and that's a factor of lots of things. In large part because of affordability. Housing costs aren't getting any less, and it's going to be harder for particularly first-time home buyers without equity in another house to bring into a project, or a significant amount of cash to bring to a project to close. And so this opportunity to me is a great first step into helping that. And so I really just want to thank you for spending the time to help craft a project for us to consider. One of the obvious questions for me, or it's obvious, but you're talking about a partnership with William and Mary, and you're talking about a partnership with the foundation. Absent those two wanting to participate, is there still an opportunity for just the city?
Absolutely.
So it's not contingent upon all three. So
it is not.
Okay. And for that matter, I hope that William and Mary will consider this, and I'm sure you've got some contacts there, and I know that we've talked to, informally, and hope that they'll invite you in for a presentation.
Yes.
If they haven't already.
Hoping they see me live stream.
Well, I'm sure they're all tuned in. So, I think that's important. So I really, again, just want to thank you for bringing this to us, and look forward to.
No, thank you for the opportunity.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Natalie. Great presentation, and thank you and your team for all the work that's gone into this thus far. And as Mr. Trivette pointed out early on, this has been in our discussions for a long time, so it's really exciting to see something presented to us that is workable. And the other thing I liked about your presentation, and I think sometimes we lose the focus on that, is that we're not trying to solve
Right.
the affordable housing issue. We're just trying to bridge a gap and at least make some effort to address some affordable housing and opportunity for first-time home buyers to own a house in the city. I'm excited about this. I think it could be a great program, regardless of what the other two organizations do. But we really appreciate C&F bringing this forward and their willingness to partner with the city on this project.
Absolutely. No, we're extremely grateful for the opportunity. So hopefully it's a good one for you guys.
Hi. Yes, thank you so much. This is really impressive. So much work obviously has gone into this, and this is such an important topic. And as somebody who moved to the city as a young 30-something and bought my first home here and was part of a program that was helpful, I know that my husband and I would not have been able to do that and become home buyers and first-time homeowners without some kind of assistance that was there. So I think that it is essential for us to think about ways that we can address like that piece of the affordable housing, multi-headed monster, because there are so many pieces to it. And so I think about initiatives like this and the things that you proposed, as part of a much greater issue. And I think it is important to think about, what are we trying to do? Like, what part of the puzzle is this addressing? What part of the problem does this address? And I like how you're focused in on that and not trying to do everything.
Right.
Because when you try to do everything, a lot of the time you end up doing nothing. And I do, though, have a few questions or I would say things to think about. Because obviously with something like this, the devil certainly would be in the
Right.
details for a lot of things. And I appreciate that the city piece of it would not be contingent on what William and Mary does or what happens otherwise, and I think that is really, really important. Just a few things that come to my mind in kind of fleshing it out and putting a fine point on it would be flexibility. What if going down a road where investing some money and being like, we realize that we need to pivot. We need to maybe shape something a different way. And I think maintaining flexibility and ability to sort of respond if it seems like, well, maybe this type of grant actually isn't working and it would be better to shift in this way, I think that is important. So the concept of being flexible and ability to pivot, because as we all know, market situations can change. A lot can change that's not within our control. So I think flexibility is one thing that came to mind. Another thing that came to mind is measurement of success, right? So how do you, and I can tell from your presentation that you were really be thinking about, how do we measure the success of such a program as this? Is it, how many people, I would hope that at the beginning, it would be like, this is our goal of how many people we are hoping to be able to serve in the first year or the first whatever, but that measurement. And I think this would be something that in fleshing out details, it would be important to know, really putting the metrics and the goals, and then being able to assess, right, and hold us all accountable to whether or not this investment of city money is working, and then having that flexibility. And then obviously, the who we are trying to help, and I think that there's so many details that to be worked out there as well. But I'm very enthusiastic, about it. But there are a number of details that would be critical to sort of flesh out in the doing of it.
Yeah. Wonderful presentation. Thank you. Can I answer?
Yeah, please.
Absolutely.
Go for it. Yeah.
So flexibility, I kind of smiled at that because that's the benefit of C&F Bank having a mortgage company. The mortgage company is used to adaptability. Rates, we are driven by mortgage rates. So we have to shift strategies all the time. I feel like every month our CEO is sitting right there. He throws a new project at me every month just because that is life. And we are open to different opportunities and flexibility. One of the things that we talked about was one of the challenges that we have is rehab projects, or your homes that are older that need to be rehabilitated to be livable.
Yes.
And that could be something that we discuss as part of this, which is, allocating more funding to be for getting those homes livable. I just don't know what the allocation of funds would be. So that's an opportunity that we can carve out and say, maybe that's a goal of the city. When it comes to measurement, it can be measured in so many different ways. It can be number of individuals helped. It can be people that attended events, the number of people that registered versus attended. People that we counseled, went through credit education counseling, and just in general, the impact. And then from the dollar perspective, we propose $5,000 to $10,000 from a grant to be able to stretch it. But you might say, we only have X number of homes. We want to go full bore and we want to give $20,000 to $30,000. It can be, depending on the city's goals, it can be we want to help as many people as possible and we'll keep the dollar amount low, or it can be we want to make an impact, so we're going to go higher and see how successful this is and really get raving reviews and have the opportunity for those people to be advocates, to get their friends and their people to be able to come into the community. So really it's kind of an endless opportunity, and that's, Andrew has been fantastic giving us all of that feedback, a lot of the research for us to really pivot and be what you guys want us to be.
Right. And I appreciate your mention of the example of the rehab, grants or something, because that's an example of a challenge that we also have here in our community, where people may be able to make an investment, but, then to get the home, but we have a lot of older homes here that can really be a serious barrier to home ownership and especially to first-time home ownership here is that piece of it as well. So I appreciate that. And my last comment will be that I really liked how you have broken it down into those not ready to buy, those who need assistance to buy, and those who are ready, because that is the kind of thinking I think that makes a real difference here, from what I see a lot of times in discussions about trying to address housing issues or affordable housing issues. It's just glomming everything into one mess, right? And not being able to really see through, like, how do we actually be intentional and strategic and who we're trying to help and what they need at that point. I think that kind of thinking is far more productive. And to say that, a website, some people are like, well, it's just a website. But if you are just now thinking about the idea that someday I want to be able to buy a home, like, that is actually what could put you on the path to being able to do in the future. So I think almost more than anything of the presentation, really appreciated that strategic level of thinking that gives me confidence.
Thank you.
This.
I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the presentation. I have to say it's much more interesting and impressive than just reading the PowerPoint. So I really liked the details you provided and the thought process, and also introducing your team, because it helped answer a few questions as we went along. But I do have a few more questions.
Absolutely.
So for me, the down payment assistance, I think, is key. I know I would not have been able to buy my first house if my parents hadn't helped me, because I was able to meet the payments and able to meet the payments plus their down payment assistance, but didn't satisfy the bank's requirements. So I think that's key. But in the homes that I've bought, the first point of contact for me has always been the real estate agent through the for sale sign. So how does this program work with, like, a real estate agent and company, both on the educational side and the real estate agent being aware that this is available?
Yeah, that's actually great that you brought that up, because that was a strategic component on our side from a C&amp mortgage perspective that says, who do we want to partner with to be able to be an advocate for this program, somebody that is fully invested and bought into this program that can come to these educational initiatives. Bill Carr, who's in the room today, had mentioned that he has a relationship in this area that we can explore that is not defined right now, but we would carve out individual real estate agents or a brokerage of real estate agents that would be able to support this. Now, it doesn't mean that the borrower has to go with that individual. They can choose to use a real estate agent or not. That could be part of this program that says you need to work with this real estate agent. But we have found if you offer flexibility on the front end, we can support the back end. So the front end isn't necessarily a problem. We just want to make sure they're educated. So something that we would do as part of this is a full educational initiative to business owners, real estate agents, and anybody in the real estate community within the city of Williamsburg. So we would go drop flyers. I talked to Andrew. He has access to basically every print mail, being able to push out whatever we need to individuals. So I want to make sure that everyone in this area knows about it. So the goal would be that then that real estate agent says, hey, this is an opportunity. You need to take a look at it, homeowner. You're a first-time home buyer. This is an opportunity for you.
Great, because, as I say, I think that's where, for a lot of people, it starts. And then one thing that we've encountered in the past number of years here in Williamsburg is a very, very short time that a property is on the market. So particularly a first-time home buyer who doesn't know anything about buying or doesn't know where the down payment's going to go, calls their agent and said, hey, I see this house, how can you help? And they say, oh, C&amp has a great program. And by the time they've called you, there's another contract in on the house. So what do you propose or hope for the turnaround time that you all will be able to work these applications with potential home buyers?
Yeah, that's a really good question. In that exact scenario, the borrower would probably lose the house just purely because they would need to go through the process. So our standpoint would be they need to get pre-approved or worked on before they start house hunting. And by that point, then they would be provided with what they can afford. From there, they would have access and the allocated funds kind of, earmarked. so that when they do purchase the house, they would have access to it. Like I said, Randy Simmons and Georgia Parisi are in here because we actually, 50% of our borrowers are first-time homebuyers, and of them, I don't know how many to tell you we do grants, but we have become grant specialists. So some require that you can't even start the grant until you have a contract, which makes it so difficult. So we are used to front end, back end, last minute, so we are happy to handle whatever we can. But in this particular scenario, this program, what we're presenting is that people would come to us first, whether they talk to a real estate agent first, bringing them to us, or that they come to us, get them pre-approved, allow them to see what they can afford with the grant, and then they would go out. Because in that case, then they would be able to make the offer on day one when it pops up, versus if they see a home, they haven't even started the process to see how much they can afford.
Thank you. And I think you answered one of the other questions about the grants and that you all would provide the assistance, because I know it takes a certain knack to be able to write a grant and to follow it through, and also to nudge and understand what the turnaround time is for a grant. So I appreciate that.
So from that perspective, I do want to clarify, we would not manage your funds. That would be something that we would have to determine with Andrew and the team on. It's your funding. We can manage it from a treasury perspective. We have our treasury team in here. The $900,000 would be in the bank account. You guys would just need to initiate that we're allowed to have the funds. We can't just go in and kind of pull the funds out. We have to make sure you guys sign off that it's okay to get it. But the benefit is, because it's with the bank and we have this relationship and it's all through C&F, we're talking to the same people versus having to go to an outside party.
Right, and I was also talking about the other grants that you
Yes,
mentioned.
yes,
I think
yes.
there are a lot of federal ones that
Correct.
can be very confusing.
Yes, yes.
So just to put it at that. And then when you mentioned the city foundation, were you talking about the Williamsburg Community Foundation?
Yes.
Okay, have conversations been held with them?
Not yet.
Okay, okay. And it seems like I had, and the other thing I really liked was that your campaign materials are very relevant to the way that people operate now in terms of an app on their phone.
Right.
I mean, that's the way everybody does everything. And I'm all in favor of trying this and seeing how it works. We set this money aside from ARPA, 3-4 years ago? And I think it's time to invest it in a program that could have some true benefits to city and city residents. So
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and to all your team.
Williams?
Yes, well, thank you for the presentation and to the work that you and your team have already done thus far in encouraging home ownership here in the city, especially when we think of first-time home buyers, young professionals looking to move here, and also just affordability altogether. I did have 2 questions. So one is in relation to the down payment assistance program. So with the grants there, how are those amounts determined? Are those Williamsburg specific? As you know, the market for homes here is very expensive.
Yes.
So just wondering if that was was tailored to Williamsburg, or if those are more consistent with state programs.
I would say it's a little
around.
lower. And the reason why it was lower was because the allocation is $900,000. I wanted to see how much we could stretch it. I'll be honest, I would recommend more, just because I had Randy do a loan estimate for me of $450,000 to see what the closing costs would be. It's about $31,000. So with C&F's half a point lender credit, that would add $2,500, so then the $5,000 to $10,000. So I'd like to see it potentially a little higher, but honestly, it's truly the goal of the city. Do you guys want it to help and stretch as many people, or do you want to narrow it in to be just specific individuals that really can then enter into the Williamsburg market at a $500,000 purchase price for a first-time home buyer? That is truly digestible for the whole team to come together and identify what the best amount is.
Well, thank you. That makes sense. And I guess, as we've previously mentioned as well, as we look at this program in more and more detail and kind of receive some data, that's definitely something that we can consider moving on. It's expanding funding for this program. Another question I had, what are the steps you and your team plan to take to market the app, just the online information, so people know that this is a resource?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with this campaign, as I mentioned, we have the website. So the website is going to be the centralized location where everything points to. I'm thinking it's social, email, print, as well as deployments from your partner. So if you have William and Mary and you have us, we're going to be pushing it in the community. I think print mail is going to be big. That has been something that has been really successful for C&F this year, is that email and social media hasn't really gotten the lift that we wanted, but print mail and really directly pushing it to the home buyer has been successful for us, or hitting specific areas that are high rental areas or areas around the city that you want to be able to bring into the area. So for us, the marketing initiative is going to be developing the assets first and then putting together a calendar of how and when we're going to deploy certain initiatives. I feel like the first thing, April 1st, is going to be a deployment of print mail, and then the social campaign is going to be 2 times a week pushing whatever deliverable it is to get them either to an educational event or push them to the website. The first month, for a reason, I did not release the grant because I want people to engage in the overall message of the Williamsburg Way Home. It's not, the grant isn't the end-all be-all, and I don't want people to think that the grant is the only piece of this campaign. So starting it with the educational piece and the camaraderie and the rally behind that we have everyone invested, and a financial partner so that if they need to open a bank account or get support, they have access to be able to do so. Then introducing the grant as a later step allows us to really have that month to push and then push them to the grants. After people are attending the homebuyer seminar, people are coming and asking questions. That allows us to kind of have a roster of people that we go back to call and have that on there. So there's a full campaign of deliverables that I'm happy to share.
That sounds exciting. One more question just popped into mind. So with the learning resources, will those be also tailored to Williamsburg, or are those a part of like the huge, it seems like huge collection that you already have?
We would take basically whatever we developed and tailor it to you guys. Most of it is generic in nature, so, budgeting 101, but honestly, I would like to have anything specific to, maybe it is that your homes are a little higher in sales price, and these are the things that we need to do to be able to get you there. This is the average amount that you need to save, whatever it might be. So absolutely, we are happy to curtail anything to be specific to the city.
Well, thank you so much again.
Well, Natalie, thank you and all the C&F team for being here. I think probably next step would be to continue working with the city manager to kind of work out some of the fine tuning of this, and then there'll be probably an ask of council to kind of solidify this program into action. So we look forward to getting to that day.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
And thank you, Andrew.
Okay, next is presentation and discussion regarding the proposed rent-ready Williamsburg Ordinance program and guidelines. Ms. Griffin, welcome.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Mayor Pons and Vice Mayor Dent and all the members of City Council. So before I get started, I do want to just thank everyone that has been a part of the rent-ready journey that we've had for the past maybe like 2 years. It started, of course, before then with conversations to the Neighborhood Balance Committee, but really the bulk of the work and putting a draft together started in late 2023. So thank you, everyone that's participated. Thank you for coming to the input sessions. Thank you for your comments that you provided through our website portal. And also thank you for your surveys that all of you provided your input. And I'm not talking to City Council per se, but I'm talking to the residents, students, landlords, and everyone who came out to those meetings. So today, my presentation will be threefold. I'll begin with a brief overview of the core components of the Rent Ready program. I'll then summarize the key themes that emerged from the most recent public input sessions that we had late last year. And then I'll conclude by outlining the revisions made to the draft program as a result of that feedback. And first, I'll get started by talking about what is Rent Ready. Rent Ready is a volunteer program. It is a program that we are trying to move forward to look at single-family detached homes next to William and Mary. There are 4 specific areas, and I'll show a map later that'll show you where that is. But what we're trying to do is really improve the quality and safety of housing in these areas. We believe that Rent Ready is not just a certification, it is a way of really improving the housing stock as far as the quality in these areas. Just a background, this began in 2019. There was a conversation about the balance of rentals and owner-occupied houses in older neighborhoods next to the university. And Rent Ready began to be one of the tools that we would use in the toolbox to really help us get at balancing the scales. So in 2019, the City Council convened the Neighborhood Balance Committee. It was a work group, and they were going to address neighborhood stability issues, including affordability, owner occupancy, and student occupancy. And Rent Ready is the 10th neighborhood balance identified concept that has actually been moved forward since 2020. The consideration and implementation of a Rent Ready Williamsburg program has been included in our GIOs. It began in 2021. It was another GIO in 2023, and also our latest one in 2025, which included us actually drafting the program. As I stated before, there are 4 rent areas. The first one is District 1. It's Richmond Road area from Monticello to College Corner. There's Jamestown Road area from Lake Matoaka to College Corner. There's also Capitol Landing and also along York Street. And the areas are shown here on this map. The districts are for single-family detached dwellings in these areas here, and this is where we're proposing the Rent Ready program to be implemented. There are 4 challenges that we are trying to address in Rent Ready, and these are important because in having the input sessions, one thing that I learned is that several people thought that Rent Ready would do more than what it was actually proposed to do. And so this is important for everyone to understand that, again, it was one of the tools in the toolbox. And what we're trying to do is address building safety and quality, to improve communication and cooperation between residents in these neighborhoods, to improve quality, and also to preserve the character of these older established neighborhoods. Some key concepts is first, and probably most foundational, is the collaboration between the city and William and Mary. And what this simply means is that William and Mary will endorse this program. They will advertise this program to families of students entering the university. This will also be something that they have on their website, something that they provide through mailers. If you are in a rent-ready home, and if you are a landlord that is going to have a rent-ready home, the university will provide housing fairs, and only those landlords will be able to attend those housing fairs. They have housing fairs now on campus. And also, the city will provide an actual inspector for rent-ready homes, and also a website platform. So we really love the program because at the foundation is a collaboration between the university and the city. There's also going to be a quality assessment score, a property rating. There are best practice leases. We are looking and have provided those best practices as a list in our guidelines. And if you are going to be a rent-ready home, 75% of the guidelines that we have for best practices we would ask for you to have in your leases. And talking to students, what we found is that some students did not actually have a lease. Those that had a lease did not have simple things in the lease as far as even the cost of what their unit was supposed to be. And so we do want to make sure that the leases that are coming through rent-ready homes have those best practices inside. And then the Rent Ready Academy. We've heard a lot about education and the importance of education, and one of the things that came through our landlord focus groups and also our property owner focus groups was the importance of everyone understanding the landlord-tenant rules. We want renters to understand what their rights are, and then we also want landlords to understand what their responsibilities are to residents who are staying in these homes. And I'm not going through all of the core concepts. We would be here for about an hour if I did. So we have had the core concepts online for around 6 or 7 months now. And so today I'll just focus on the major changes to the Rent Ready program. So one of the things that became really a point of conversation during our input sessions was our current 4-person incentive and how this would change. So our zoning ordinance now allows 3 unrelated persons to stay in a single-family detached home. And the Rent Ready program would provide an incentive for persons that are involved in Rent Ready to be able to have an additional person living in their home for occupancy. So the Rent Ready proposal allows more homes to gain 4-person occupancy. To earn 4-person occupancy, your property must earn a quality assessment score of a 95. Your quality assessment score is received through 3 things. First, an interior inspection, an exterior inspection, and the provision of certain amenities. The proposal does eliminate the square footage requirements currently in place. So for the 4-person home currently, in order for someone to be eligible or a house to be eligible, they must have at least 2,000 square feet and have 4 bedrooms. And this proposal, the Rent Ready proposal, would eliminate the square footage requirement that's currently in place. The parking and bedroom requirements would remain the same. And people have asked, okay, well, what does that mean? What do you consider a bedroom? And the requirements for a bedroom can be found in this property maintenance code. And I see several of you writing, and I know the question that you're going to ask me. So I'm going to take my glasses off so I can read what you're going to ask me. So there are currently 677 single-family detached houses in our districts 1, 2, 3, and 4 that I just showed you on the map. 195 of those houses have 2,000 square feet or more and 4 bedrooms. That's 29%. So 29% of the single-family detached homes currently are eligible for our 4-person rule. As you can see here, there are 37, and I actually believe since this slide has gone up, has been done, there's 38 homes now that have 4-person occupancy. With this proposal and eliminating that 2,000 square foot requirement, still having the 4-bedroom requirement, there are 70 homes out of the 677 in districts 1, 2, 3, and 4 that have less than 2,000 square feet but have 4 bedrooms. So this is an increase of 10%. And in total, there then would be 39% of the homes in District 1, 2, 3, and 4 that would be eligible for Rent Ready.
Can I just to clarify on that?
Yes.
Not all of those homes that are less than 2,000 square feet and 4 bedrooms are currently rentals. Some of them are owner-occupied.
Yes, thank you for saying that. So actually, no. When we did this, we just did rental homes.
Okay.
So these are rentals. These are rentals, but I'm glad you brought that up. One thing that this did not show is the parking requirements. So the parking, you have to have at least 4 parking spaces. Those parking spaces have to be in the driveway, or they have to span on the public right-of-way the width of the lot. So these additional 70 we did not look at the parking. So there could be some within that 70 that don't meet the parking requirements.
Thank you.
Okay. So going back, we now have 38 homes now enrolled in the 4-person occupancy program. These homes are in good condition and should have no problem meeting the required QA or quality assessment score of 95 to qualify for the Rent Ready program. To ease the transition, current 4-person properties maintain their active certificate of occupancy, and and their certificate of occupancy is for 4 years. That was a question that came up with many landlords who were a part of the input sessions that now have 4-person homes. So what this means is at the end of their occupancy permit for 4 years, they would be able to transition into rent ready if they had a quality score of 95. Previously, prior to us getting feedback, there was a 2-year window that they had to transition between and to have a QA score of 95. We're now suggesting that window not be there, and if after the 4 years they are at 95, they transition right into rent ready, and they would not lose any 4-person occupancy. So just to give you just some insight on our public input process, on July 10th, I stood here and talked to City Council to let you know that we were launching the input sessions. And August 8th, we put all of our information online so people could see that. There was an online feedback that launched, and that remains open today. So we're continually getting feedback on the Rent Ready program, and believe me that we are getting feedback on the Rent Ready program. August 28th was our first public input session. It was held here in Stryker. September 18th, we held a public input session on campus, and then September 30th was our last public input session again here in Stryker. So when I say public input sessions, I'm talking about in-person sessions. There were 81 people that attended the 3 input sessions combined, and 36 people responded to the online feedback form. And by this time, that probably has increased to around 37 or 38 people. When we did a survey, and one of the questions that we wanted to know is who was in the room or who came to the input sessions. 31% of those attending were landlords, 48% were students, and 21% were other. We also wanted to know where people lived that were participating in the input sessions. And they not only participated in the input sessions, but they participated in the survey. So when you came to the input sessions, we had a pre-presentation survey that we gave you, and then a post-survey to see what you thought. On campus, students living on campus was 22%. Students at rented units and multifamily dwellings were 6%. 25% that attended rented units and single-family dwellings, and 16% were owner-occupied home buyers or home residents in the downtown neighborhood. And then 31% were none of these. And our assumption was that this 31% included landlords. So one of the questions that we thought was important to ask was, what do you think Rent Ready Williamsburg has met its intended effect? 59% said no, and 41% said yes. And so we asked people, why did you say yes? And they believe that it improved the quality and safety of housing, holds landlords and tenants accountable, allows a review by the city, it improves the existing inspection program, and it attempts to meet some of the needs of all stakeholders. When I started this program process very early on, one thing that I knew would be a challenge is that there were 3 stakeholders, and all of them felt very differently about what Rent Ready should be. So providing a program or guidelines that really tried to meet the needs of all 3 of those stakeholders, I knew would be difficult, and so I'm glad that there was some acknowledgement that what we've tried to put together does attempt to meet all the stakeholders' needs, although it does not meet everyone's needs. Now, the question here we posed again, and then we went through all of the comments, and we wanted to see why people said, no, we don't think Rent Ready Williamsburg will have its intended effect. And some people said, well, because it's voluntary. Well, the program has to be voluntary. The state code does not allow us to have a rental inspection program outside of that's endorsed in the state code, and that program does look at the minimum, and we do that. We have that program on the books now, and if you are in one of those 4 districts and you are a landlord and you are renting, you have to be a part of that program. This is a voluntary program because the standards that we are trying to put in place are higher, elevated from the standards that are in the state program. Others said not enough incentives for landlords to enroll. In speaking to landlords, two of the things that they wanted was either a tax incentive or some type of monetary incentive, and that was something that we did not feel was appropriate. And so, not knowing who said this, but I can tell you that was two of the things that landlords were looking for. Others were concerned that they wanted the incentives to be a higher number of occupants that could be in the home. And the four-person has been something that has worked in the city, and so we did not feel that this particular iteration of Rent Ready should increase that occupancy. Participants with goals other than quality of housing. So this gets to something that I talked to when I first started the presentation, that several people wanted Rent Ready to do things that Rent Ready was not supposed to do, or what we thought Rent Ready should do. And some of those things was affordability, student behavior, landlord response time. That was landlord response time to getting back with people if they had applications. We heard from some people that the application process for getting into a home was too long, and they wanted to see if Rent Ready could decrease that. They also were concerned about the application fees. They were not getting calls back, but their application fees were not being refunded. And so they had several applications out on the street with their money gone, but no response. And that, of course, is unfortunate, but it's something that we could not really help with the Rent Ready program. And then, again, there were persons who wanted this program to provide an increase in occupancy. Too few consequences for students and too many penalties for landlords. The cost, waiting period to receive the incentive is too long. Education classes are arduous, program seems complicated, and current landlords within the four-person occupancy felt program was costly and not truly voluntary. So starting from cost to the bullets all the way down, these are really the things that we tried to hone in on to make some revisions to the program. And hopefully you'll see that as I begin to go through those slides, that we did try to look at cost. We tried to reduce the waiting period for the incentive. I told you about that for the four-person. There's no longer that transition period. We've made some flexibility in the education classes. And we've also, today after this meeting, we will launch on our website a pamphlet that we believe makes understanding the quality assessment score a lot easier. We walk you through that process to really show you this is how you move through your scoring. So, some key proposal changes. As a result of the public input, staff has made 6 key changes to concepts in the Rent Ready Williamsburg proposal. The first is the time frame for the landlord to receive the incentive. I talked about that for four-person, and now I'll speak to that for the 2-year for the 4-year period to get a four-person incentive. So if you're not a four-person and you currently have 3 persons, or you may have something other than that going on, we've reduced you coming into Rent Ready from 4 years, which is a part of our first proposal, to 1 year. So let me go back. If you received a quality assessment score of 95, the proposal prior to the input sessions requires you to have that 95 score for 4 years. And what we heard from those who came to the meetings was this was too long, and we should be able to have the incentive at a quicker pace. And so we've reduced that 4 years to 1 year. So if you are a landlord, you would have your inspection. We would see that you have that 95 score, or you would have to keep that 95 score for a year. And after that year, you would then be able to increase your occupancy from 3 to 4. That is a significant change, a reduction in 3 years. Parking, there were people who wanted some clarity on where persons can park their vehicles. Again, 4 vehicles. We would assume people would have 4 vehicles if they have 4 persons. Any parking has to take place in the driveway and in the public right-of-way within the width of the actual parcel. Rent Ready Academy for landlords enrolled in landlord-tenant housing courses. What we heard from several landlords, specifically landlords who were brokers, who were real estate agents, or who were property managers, was that they felt like this particular requirement overstretched, and they also felt like they already were getting certifications because of their profession. And so I looked into that, and that was correct. If they met any of those requirements, they have to have certifications every 2 years. And those certifications talked about landlord-tenant relationships, all the things that we wanted the Rent Ready Academy to do. So there is an exception now. We're proposing an exception, that if they can show us that they have their continuing education credit hours, they would not have to take the Rent Ready Academy. Now, what we also know is that there are landlords that don't meet any of those requirements, and we feel that they still need to have those courses. And so they would still be required to have the Rent Ready Academy courses. Required lead-based paint report. There were some questions about the certification that we were requiring. And doing more research, what we found is that the landlord must provide the inspector with required lead-based paint documentation. This is because if you have a home that is older than 1978, the federal government already requires you to provide information on lead-based paint. And instead of us having landlords to do anything additional, if they show the inspector during the annual inspections and during our follow-up inspections that paperwork that they have provided to the resident, then that is what we will take instead of having them do the certification. This speaks to cost and reducing the cost. Required asbestos report. And I will say, in talking to students, this is something that they're not getting now. So it's important, because if a landlord doesn't know that they have to do that, it may not be something that they're doing. And it also allows students or any renter to understand what is required of the landlord, and they can then ask for this paperwork. Required asbestos report. Prior to the input sessions, we were requiring asbestos report certification. And now what we're requesting is that during the inspection, the landlord must disclose known disturbed asbestos inside the dwelling. And looking through and doing additional research after hearing back from the input, there could be asbestos throughout the house, in the pipes, in several of the appliances on the outside. And so we wanted to reduce that cost, and they would have to disclose known disturbed asbestos inside the dwelling. Again, this is something that is not required, and even in putting this in writing, it is something that renters will then be able to ask of their landlord. Right now, we're looking, there was nothing included during the input sessions or prior to the input sessions about interior mold removal. And mold is something that we get calls on often. And when persons call us about mold, there's nothing in the property maintenance code that addresses mold. What we can tell them is that if they have a leak of some sort, if there's an issue that we can see, that we can say that mold is here because of this issue, then we can have the landlord to fix the issue. But there's nothing in the property maintenance code that allows our inspectors to go out and address mold specifically. And so this is still important, and it's something that we believe Rent Ready can help with. And so during our inspection, we will inspect, and we will have to see that there's no visible evidence of mold inside the dwelling. And again, this is something that is not required at this point, that we are saying should be a part of the Rent Ready program. There were some other key clarifying concepts. There was a requirement prior to the input sessions for rodent insect inspection, and now we are saying that a report from an exterminator showing no infestations or that an existing infestation was treated, dated within 1 month of the application, shall be provided. Again, there were questions about what exactly are we looking for, and it was thought that what we were requesting was going to cost too much, and we wanted to provide some clarity. We want to define founded complaints. There was a question about one of the the actual tenets of the Rent Ready program is that we want to make sure that residents are following the rules of the city, following the rules of the property maintenance code, and so if there are complaints and if there are violations, we wanted to give some clarity on the difference. And so there was a question, do I get my points reduced if I have a complaint, or are points reduced in that quality assessment if I actually have a founded complaint? And to clarify that, points are reduced for a founded violation. And even providing more clarity, each founded complaint shall be added to the cumulative total of violations. And so what that means, if there is a violation and it's actually a founded violation from zoning, and then there's a founded violation from police or property maintenance, those are added cumulatively together. And right now, if the police go out and there is a complaint and there's a violation, that first violation or that first complaint is a warning. And we are saying that we would do the same for Rent Ready. If there is a founded property maintenance violation, it is a warning. And the second time, it would then be a 10-point reduction. Again, in trying to make sure that this program really considers all of the stakeholders, one of the questions that we had from a student is, man, we can make one mistake, and one mistake can cost us Rent Ready, or one mistake can cost us or cost the landlord Rent Ready. And just to explain, you start with the 95 in order to be a part of the Rent Ready program that gets you the incentive to have the additional occupant, the fourth person. And if you have a violation, how the program was written, and you receive 10 points or reduced from that violation, you then go down to an 85. And at 85, the score says that you could not have that extra person. And we didn't want that to happen quickly if there was a violation for the first time. So this does have a one violation grace period. And the second violation, whether that's a zoning violation, a property maintenance violation, or a police violation, the second time it would be reduced to 10 points. That makes sense, because I see you guys looking at me. You can ask me when I finish. Okay, definitions. We did want to define agent, landlord, and tenant to clarify the roles, and then Rent Ready Academy. There were questions from renters or students about the course and when it could be taken, and so we are looking to make sure that it's flexible. We are looking at having courses online that could be taken at their leisure, and also we had an idea about right now, if you are four-person, the inspector, the four-person or the zoning inspector, she goes out, and before the classes actually start in August and September, she goes out and she sits down with all of the residents, and she has a meeting with all of the residents to talk to them, and this is required. It is mandatory. All of the residents have to be there along with the landlord in order for her to speak to them and talk to them about the four-person program and what are the rules and what should be expected for the year. And the idea was, do we do the same thing for Rent Ready? Do we have that initial annual inspection be that precursor to the Rent Ready Academy, and then we provide them with information where they can go online and continue to take classes as they need for whatever they would want to learn about being a renter in a single-family detached home. So, we put this slide here because we thought it was important for everyone to see that even if Rent Ready was something that people thought should not move forward, those who attended the input sessions and gave us their feedback said that the city should implement something to create a quality standard for safe and habitable off-campus housing. So the score is, how important is it that city implement Rent Ready? Williamsburg, on a scale of 1 to 5, the average rating was 2.84. However, when asked, how important is it that the city implements something to create a quality standard for safe and habitable off-campus housing on a scale of 1 to 5, and that rating was 4.2. And so those in attendance, and I would also say those who gave their feedback on the online form, would like the city to do something to create quality standard or to improve quality standard housing off campus. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I will say again is that this afternoon, launching on the website is the revised ordinance, the revised guidelines, and also what we believe is a nice formatted kind of cheat sheet that provides the reader with walking them through how to do their quality assessment. And also, we have a sheet there that will show you, on one side, it'll have our current rental program, that's the state program, and also our voluntary program. And what we want people to see there is how this program elevates those minimum requirements. And there was also talk about how people believe that this program would increase their cost. So we wanted to show that what Rent Ready is actually asking landlords to do are things that we believe landlords would love to do and would not be that arduous on them to do. A lot of the things that we're asking to be implemented would not have an extreme additional cost to it. And you will see that in the platform that we put out today. Have any questions? I'm happy to answer.
Well, Ms. Griffin, thank you for not only the presentation today, but for spending your career here at Williamsburg working on Rent Ready. It has been a long haul, and it hasn't been easy because, in part because we have three unique kind of user groups, and trying to please all of those different groups, you just can't do it. And I think that's really evidence when you look at the ratings of, yeses and nos and, 2.8% like it and so on. I applaud the efforts that you've made to address some of the concerns from the stakeholders, and particularly as it relates to cost for landlords, because clearly for this program, this voluntary program to work, we have to have landlords be a party of it. And I think a lot of landlords, I hope that a lot of landlords do participate, because really this comes down, in my mind, to providing good quality products for a large segment of our residence base here, and i.e. students primarily. In my capacity on council, I've had a lot of years talking to students, and every year when I meet with students, it's almost like Groundhog Day, because some of the same issues come up every year about the students' relationship with their landlord. Some landlords are without scruples and treat them poorly and have them live in lesser than safe conditions, and I think all of us want that not to be the case. And so having a program like this, which allows for inspections, which would then allow for better maintenance on some of these properties, makes perfect sense, and there's an incentive to come along with that. And I think for the non-landlord, non-student, but even for the permanent resident, so to speak, component, having them see that our city is involved in their neighborhoods addressing some of the concerns that they have, I think is absolutely important. So it benefits all those three user groups. And so I'm excited about this moving forward, and probably most because of the safety standards and the quality of living for our residents. I don't think it's a unique, that student rental is unique. I mean, they want to be close to where they need to be, just like all people do, and so that kind of forces them in to a tighter area, but then it also causes them to have to maybe be subject to unhealthy living conditions, and we certainly don't want to do that. So Just a question, when you were talking about points in the 95 and losing, one of the things that struck me is what party to the infraction suffers the consequence of their actions. For example, if there's a ruckusy party house and the landlord's doing what they can, but then they get the reduction in points, and so it really only costs the landlord. Is there a consideration? How do we make adjustments for that? I mean, clearly you could have a proactive landlord, but you might just have some students that like to sit around a campfire and get up to 57 decibels every night. How do we navigate that? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that was something difficult that we were trying to come up with because we wanted to make sure that every stakeholder was invested. And so right now, as the program is written, we have that grace period, and so we think that benefits not only the landlord, but it also benefits the students. So that first infraction, that first real infraction, it is a grace period, and that is a time that the landlord could talk to the students or talk to whoever was staying there and say, okay, we need to do something different. Right now, what happens, which is the same thing that would happen in Rent Ready, that happens in four-person, we receive reports every week. We receive those reports from the police and also from any other department that would have gone out to a home. We then check to make sure and see if it's on our four-person, and we immediately call that landlord, and we have a conversation. Opening that door to have that conversation is very important, and then we also have a meeting with the students, with the landlord, to continue that conversation. And normally we don't have any other issues. So that's the first thing. Educating both and leaving those channels of communication open so everyone's on the same page, so they understand the next step. If something else happens, this is the consequence.
And not to interrupt you, but that goes right to the heart of what the issue is for each of the different stakeholders is level of involvement. You know, an active landlord typically has students that act and perform in accordance and don't have problems, don't create issues. And I create issues in my neighbors. I'm sure they get a little mad at me for being noisy, and I'm not talking about that. But I think my point is when landlords are actively participating in managing their properties and making sure that there's a communication with their students, to create expectations, whether it's just make sure you bring your trash can to the house, after it's delivered. Don't leave your trash can out on the curb. It's that type of communication, I think, that's beneficial, because then the rest of the neighborhood benefits from that. And that's really what we're trying to do here is make our neighborhoods a better place to live. And that means lots of different things, just quality of life. And so again, I'll turn this over to the rest of my colleagues, but I'm excited about being at this point. I'm excited about the opportunity to incentivize landlords to participate. I'm excited about having safer living conditions for our tenants, and I'm excited about having more active participation amongst the tenant and renters that make quality of life for non-landlords and tenants better. So, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. I know probably years from now you'll be having flashbacks about Rent Ready.
I hope not.
As the mayor stated, this has been a long process, and I really appreciate the time that you put into it to gather stakeholder input. I had the opportunity to attend 2 of the 3 sessions, heard some of the concerns. You've made adjustments. I also appreciate you taking the opportunity, because it was my question, to address the square footage. And that is something, I know there's other factors such as parking that weigh into the square footage, but that is something that if this moves forward, that I would ask my council colleagues to consider placing back in there, because I do think that the 2,000 square foot also offers a level of quality of life and safety for the occupants than it does in a much smaller occupancy. And then knowing that not everyone's going to apply for the four-person incentive, but to elevate that to 39, could elevate to 39%, would be a concern of mine. I do think that we've gone to great strides to address all of the concerns and desires of the stakeholders, but I think we'll figure out if this gets implemented. We haven't met them all. So the one thing that stands out to me in your presentation is we've been talking about this for a long time, but 4.2 average says that we need to do something. So is this the answer to everything? Probably not. We've probably all missed something along the way, or there's something that can be tweaked to make it better. But I do agree that we need to do something to address the quality of life and safety standards in these properties. And I think this is a good first step, and we can always come back and address it if we need to make changes as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
What an enormous amount of work you have done on this, because it really shows through all the meetings, and the level of detail to the adjustments that you've outlined here for us so clearly today is really fantastic, because what I hope is that those who have come to the meetings and who have met with you, because I know you've met with people, you've had the group meetings, you've had the surveys, what I hope comes through is how much people are being listened to and heard, and trying very hard to balance something amongst everyone, where everyone has sometimes competing, but a lot of times, complementary goals. But I think that's something that no matter what happens, that comes through is like the level of listening and responding that you have done. And that is a huge, I think, just kudos to you and everyone in the planning department, because I think that that's the most important thing throughout a process, is that people are being listened to. And not just like, okay, great, thank you very much, but really responding. And I see that. I just want you to know I see that, and it's fantastic. And I think it creates a better program.
Yes.
And that's what we want to do. I do have a couple of questions, and one of them is, so the 95 QA score to get to the 4-person occupancy for 1 year, you say you get that, say that happens. Mm-hmm. And then a warning happens, one violation happens, but you get a warning. And then the second time, that 10-point drop. Let's say I imagine there's situations where somebody could have a QA where the 10-point drop won't make them fall below 95, right? But say they do, what happens? Like, really, what happens when when a property drops below 95?
Yes, so we give them the opportunity to correct the violation. And I'm trying to see, I can't remember all the numbers, but we give them a grace period to be able to correct the violation. Okay. If they're able to correct whatever the issue is within that time frame, then they go back up to that 95 status. If they don't correct that, then they will lose their 4-person occupancy, not for that time, but for the next year. Okay. So this program, one of the important things was that we did not want anyone to be on the streets because they did not reach their 95 or they lost their 95. So we give a grace period, and that should give you enough time to fix that. And if it's not fixed within that time frame, then we send out a letter. This is in the ordinance. We send out a letter to the residents to let them know your landlord has not fixed this, and therefore next year this will not be a 4-person occupancy, so they can know that this is no longer a 4-person home.
Okay. I just wanted to highlight that to the point that you made. Like, it's not like, oh, you're at 85, like somebody's got to hit the pavement immediately. That would not be, I think the way you've laid this out.
Yes.
That then for the next year, the 4-person exception is no longer.
Correct.
Okay, and then there was a point made earlier, and I do think it's a good one, about sort of best practices for communication, right? I mean, I remember being a college student and thinking back now, to be like some of the places I lived, like what was I doing, right? And the idea of being able to approach your landlord with an issue. Are there best practices like in leases for communication or something that sort of really does build in some guardrails, right? Or not guardrails, but just like avenues to make sure that there is healthy communication happening between landlords and residents.
So it's not in the lease, but in the program guidelines and in the ordinance, we put this in here to protect the landlord and to protect the tenant. And so we have that there have to be so many calls that are made to a landlord and give them so many days to respond, because we don't want it to be so quick, and we don't want to assume that the landlord is not doing what they've been asked to do. So we do ask for that correspondence to see that correspondence, and we have a particular number of days that they have to give the landlord to respond. That's not in the lease. It is in the program guidelines.
Okay, I was just wondering if, maybe not necessarily the lease, but somewhere it kind of that accounts for that. And I'm sure that that's an issue that arises, not just within four-person, exception homes, but probably less, frankly.
I will say this too, there's also a difference between a regular issue and then an emergency maintenance issue. And we do have, as one of the amenities, required amenities, is that they have 24-hour emergency maintenance. And people say, well, what does that include? The ordinance outlines what will constitute emergency maintenance. And so this is saying that there are certain things, like a reduction or the HVAC system does not work, the AC is out, there's no water, there's backup in the bathroom. Those things are considered emergency, and so we do have a certain amount of time allotted, 24 hours, that the landlord has to get back to the resident.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions for right now. I just think that as has been said, is anything going to be perfect? No. Is everything going to be exactly what everybody wants to be? Totally not. But that's not a reason not to be excellent and as much as we can and strive for an excellent program that does as much as we can. So thank you again for all your work. And I might have more questions later. And,
Okay.
And I'll ask them when I do.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ramsey.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. And as you know, I could talk about this issue for hours.
Don't.
I'm not going to, as you and I have, having been a landlord myself and being aware of practices both by other landlords and students and living in a very heavy student rental neighborhood. But I just want to key in on a few things, some of which my colleagues have mentioned. One, I agree with Vice Mayor Dent that I think there should be a square footage requirement. I think my concern is, maybe not 2,000, but I'm fine with that. But if there's no limit, all of a sudden you'll have, a 1,200 square foot house maybe creating bedrooms or bedrooms that are the size of a box, with a very long driveway applying. And so I think there should be something on that. As far as the mayor and concern over some of the reductions, a lot of times we talk about the residents and their behavior and how that can trigger like a noise complaint, and so that's a police action that could give them a demerit. But what if the residents and the tenants are unaware of, or the guests who create the problem are not invited? Because, so I think that there needs to, just think about all of those actions. Oftentimes, the biggest noise in my neighborhood is from people coming to and from a party, not actually at the party. And so once they leave the house, the tenants who are there are the ones that are going to get dinged, but they have no idea of what is happening elsewhere. And I know that there are some landlords who institute like a separate clause, a fine if the students get a noise violation. So even with best practices in a lease, I assume a landlord could still put their own sort of key points to a lease.
They could. They could.
And I'm particularly pleased about having a response time, and particularly for emergency maintenance. I think that's what I've heard the most from students is like their heat has gone out. Or just recently I heard with this cold weather that their HVAC system and their windows couldn't keep up with the extreme cold, so it was 61 degrees in the house. Yeah. And so if there is an emergency response time and a student contacts and the landlord doesn't do anything, what options does the tenant have in that case?
Yes, so during that time, the tenant should contact the city. Our then inspectors would go out and do a inspection to see if it is a warranted violation. And if it's a warranted violation, we would then move forward to contact the landlord and have them correct those things immediately. And that is within the ordinance. The reason why we've kind of framed it the way we have is to make sure that it actually is they've given the landlord the time to be able to respond. So it would follow the regular succession of the property maintenance code.
Yeah, my tenant's heat went out, AC went out this summer in July, and July 4th weekend, and sometimes it's very hard to get someone to come in and put in a new system during a holiday weekend. So just want to be sure that there is some follow-up and that's done. And as far as the four-person houses, they would still have their annual inspection as they do now. Is that
Yes, they would.
correct?
They would still have their annual inspection. Yes.
Okay. And I agree, too, with what's been said about this being one of a tools in a toolbox. I think when we had our conversation with our legislators, that was one thing that they wanted us to look at was, try rent ready and see how it works, what might need to be tweaked, and then come back to us to try to make some changes within the General Assembly. And I also appreciate you noting what's going to be online as far as what's currently required for inspection and what this is, because I think the impression is that this is far and above beyond what people have to do. And just thinking about it, I think having things spelled out and a little clearer in terms of inspection and expectations helps keep up with trends for safety.
Yes.
When I was a child, there were no smoke detectors in the houses. And so now that's very common, as are carbon monoxide detectors, which seem to have come around in the past, 10, 15 years. So sometimes it's hard to keep up with all of those things unless you're sort of in the business. And I think, to me, too, I'm ready to move forward on this because it's something we've been working on for a long time. And I also think with health and safety as the key components of it, that should be something everyone, whether it be a resident, a tenant, or a landlord, should focus on, and that's what we're looking for, and that incentives shouldn't be required to elevate health and safety concerns for anyone. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Williams?
Yes, well, thank you, Ms. Griffin, for the presentation, the time that you and your team has also spent, and just for clarifying a lot of the commonly confused language and also the questions that we received during the input sessions specifically. And I wanted to thank, too, the public for coming out to the input sessions. It's very just encouraging to see, I believe it was 81 people who attended all three of the input sessions. So just to see the feedback and also the community just interest in this area as well. Today we first started our conversation on ways to bolster home ownership, and I think it's very appropriate that we shifted our conversation to making sure that we have resources and also programs in place for tenants. Specifically, there's a large amount of students that are in these rental properties as well, and then also landlords, and also our year-round neighbors as well. So I don't have any specific questions, but I wanted to see, Ms. Griffin, if you can I know you mentioned the resources that will be made available for the public to reference, but do you mind going into more detail, a little bit more of what the public can expect with those, like the cheat sheets and the different resources that we're introducing or that have already been in place?
Yes. So the simplest two things that will be online that people have seen before is the ordinance. And so the ordinance just it's updated with the changes that you just saw. And the program guidelines are also updated with those changes. I feel like the things that will be most exciting, if you're into this, would be the exterior inspections and also the interior inspections. And Nicole Trifoni and Micah have did a wonderful job in laying this out and making it so plain. So I want to thank them for, where'd she go? She's coughing, she's walking out. Thank her and Micah for all of their assistance. But there will be one document that has interior inspections. The next document will have exterior inspections, and on the left-hand side, it will show rent-ready Williamsburg proposed, and it'll have the basic elements. So, for example, the element of stairways, decks, and porches. It'll show what the rent-ready requirement is, and then it'll show on the right-hand side what the current state requirement is. And you'll be able to see that in a lot of places, they're the same. But in some places, the Rent Ready program elevates what is being required, or it even spells out what's being required. You'll see that the rental inspection program is very basic, and it doesn't give you specifics, but the Rent Ready program gives you specifics in what the inspector is going to be looking for. And that way, the inspector can actually require those things because it's spelled out. And that will be a sheet, again, for exterior and also for interior. Then with the program guidelines, we went a step further, and it'll walk you through as if you are a landlord or are a tenant and you're trying to understand the quality assessment score. It'll start by first saying, these are the scores that you can have. You can have so many points for exterior, so many points for interior. They have a total. You have to have a minimum here, and then it moves on to amenities. I think it is very well put together, self-explanatory, and I think people will be able to follow it much easier. That was one of the questions that we had, and a lot of the questions we knew that people probably weren't understanding what we were trying to communicate, so we did change that format. It made it a lot easier.
Yes, well, thank you for creating these resources, and I think they're extremely helpful, especially because I know for myself it can be a little confusing between the different programs, so having that as a reference point to just understand that better, I think is extremely helpful. And just thank you again for the information today, and as we continue to discuss the best way forward, whether it's rent ready or looking at some alternative programs as well. As standalone programs or in conjunction with Rent Ready, I think is definitely useful. So thank you again.
Oh, thank you. So one of I think the only real change that I heard that maybe you can consider is Vice Mayor's suggestion of going back to 2,000 square feet. I don't know. There's a consensus on council that we do that. Perhaps what we can do, because I think it's time that we move forward, is can we put this on the agenda for March, allowing the opportunity for the community to provide additional feedback over this next month. We'll have an opportunity for people to speak on Thursday's meeting. There's another one here on the agenda for today. Give folks the opportunity to come in and share some thoughts, but I'd like to maybe try to get something done next month.
Okay.
Everybody's okay with that? Okay, good.
All right, thank you.
Okay, takes us now to City Council communications. Anything, anybody?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, this last Thursday, the Williamsburg contingent, which consisted of Mr. Trivette, Mr. Witt, Ms. Kern-Scherer, and myself, attended the General Assembly VML Legislative Day, but it gave us the opportunity to speak with our legislators and bring our legislative agenda forward again to discuss with them, but it also gives us the opportunity to hear some of the things that may be proposed now that could impact Williamsburg. I always find it informative. One of the things that's amazing is the building is completely full and everybody's there for the same reason, trying to push their legislative agendas forward. So I really appreciate Senator Diggs and Delegate Anderson making the time for us, and for Mr. Witt for having a schedule for us and keeping us on track and giving us that opportunity.
It is a lot of fun to go up there, and thank you both for attending. The other? Okay, you see in the agenda, both on paper and then online, the schedule of meetings for the rest of the month and into March. So stay tuned, stay informed. Which leads us now to open forum again. I did get another speaker's card, and I have Ms. Colette Roots, if you'd like to come forward. Just state your name and address for the record.
My name is Colette Roots. I live in the Wells subdivisions. I'm a homeowner and a descendant from Williamsburg. Thank God for Reverend Wells back in the day that had all of that property, and a lot of us low-income families was able to buy the property and build there. My question, and thank God for Citizen and Farmers back in 1955 for giving my mother and father an opportunity that was working for Colonial Williamsburg. One was working for as a waiter, the other one was a housekeeper, and they still do have their house. So thank God for C&amp. My question is, when I was listening to you all, and when you say an affordability, I just want you to put on conscious what you're saying. Working at the College of Women Mary, retired disability, you said administrator and faculty, which I know a lot of faculty and administrators, but you didn't say anything about the housekeepers, the laborers people. And I think you need to put that in with not just administrators and the faculty. If you're going to ask the city of Williamsburg for grants, a lot of us had laborers, our parents, and about the history of Williamsburg coming about displacement, how we got there, how those 3 neighborhoods from the laborers, which is Wells, Howlane Park, and Currituck, that's always been in the city of Williamsburg. The last time I moved here, my husband was a retired military. We moved back here. They opened houses up in the city of Williamsburg for Strawberry Plain. But when they did it, they thought about the laborers. And they were afford to go on Strawberry Plain and build houses. Not, because the houses in Williamsburg, nobody really can afford it if they're low-income families. So when you're asking for the city and citizen and farmers, remember there are laborers that would like to stay in Williamsburg, would like to be able to afford in Williamsburg, and we haven't had that opportunity. And with me being military and meeting a lot of people that has moved here and talked to them, what brought you to Williamsburg? I was able to move from New York, Jersey, and all, and can afford a $450,000, $500,000 house. So when you're talking about proposal, you need to make sure that these banks and people also think about the laborers. And that was all. And about the mold issue, no matter where they at with the rent, it should be always an issue. We had a lot of people that had black mold, and they had to call social service to get them to come and remove the mold. No matter whether they're renters, landlords, the mold issue should always be addressed for the students. And Wells Development, we have the football players. We have 2 houses. They're the football players and the cheerleaders. We know who moves in the neighborhood. One day they did a bonfire for homecoming. I looked, I said, oh, Lord, they in the woods. I came to ask the students, can you put the fire out? Do you know that's a code? And they did. But I had to tell the landlord, this is not acceptable as a private homeowner. So students are respectful when you do approach them and let them know, hey, this is not a neighborhood you can catch on fire. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to come forward? Mr. Maslin? Welcome, sir. Can you state your name and address for the record? You know how this works.
Yeah, Ted Maslin, 196 Lewis Robert Lane. I may have a unique perspective on the proposed rent-ready program. As a student, I rented in a house in Walnut Hills 2 blocks from Lake Matoka. I currently own this house and have rented it to students for the past 4 years. 6 years ago, I was a member of City Council when we asked city staff to develop a rent-ready program. I've attended all 3 rent-ready feedback sessions, the Student Assembly off-campus housing panel discussion, and helped students present a financial literacy session on off-campus housing at the business school. Based on the feedback from students, landlords, and neighbors, I recommend that City Council ask staff for an alternate plan or a Plan B should the proposed rent-ready program fall short of achieving its objectives. Thanks for the however slide we saw that indicated that 84% of respondents would like us to do something. As a community, we should all support the stated goals of ensuring quality and safe off-campus housing. I recommend that we add affordability as an additional goal. We should develop a program which looks at ensuring quality, safe, affordable housing throughout the whole city, not just in the limited 4 districts. By limiting the program to these 4 districts, we are ignoring housing opportunities in neighborhoods actually closer to the campus than districts 3 and 4. Those neighborhoods ignored by the city often have larger houses, increased off-street parking, and greater distances between neighbors. Furthermore, the unintended consequence of the city restricting 4-person housing to only certain neighborhoods is that it encourages investors to focus their rentals there. Look at the situation in neighborhoods such as Indian Springs. How about a Plan B, which creates a housing ombudsperson position equally funded by William and Mary and the city of Williamsburg? Just think of the potential success this role could generate. With super influencing and engagement skills, such a facilitator could bring the multiple stakeholders together. This position would ensure that the Virginia landlord-tenant laws are followed throughout the whole city and could suggest where zoning might be made more responsive for everyone's benefit. The ombudsperson might explore off-campus housing and supply dynamics. For example, we know that William & Mary ranks number 1 in study abroad programs. Are there ways to encourage more students to study abroad in the fall rather than the spring to help equalize housing demand between semesters? We are fortunate that there is currently a surplus of off-campus housing options. Although the university's dorm capital plan does not add beds at the end of its 10-year project, we know that depending on the construction schedule mix each year, there are more or less beds available. This year, there's an increased number of beds available on campus. Also, this is the first year that we have heard of empty rooms at Midtown Row. Historically, 600-plus students have rented rooms there each year. How long will this surplus last? For example, what will happen when the university's master lease of the Ludwell Apartments expires in 2 years? My concern is that the rent-ready program as proposed has taken a turn down a rabbit hole where the sticks still outnumber the carrots. Now is the time for City Council to refocus efforts on a program which will become successful for the entire community. Also, having a housing ombudsperson funded by both the city and William & Mary would help with housing affordability issues such as the program presented earlier this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. But anybody else? Yes, sir, Mr. Hughes. Welcome, sir.
Yes, welcome. Stuart Hughes, 103 Williamsburg Avenue. Listening to the rent ready, it seems like everything's being tilted to benefit the student. I think that any student who participates in a rent ready should be able to provide renter's insurance to protect the homeowner or the renter to these people, because grease fire, they're responsible. So the tenants should have renter's insurance to be a part of the rent ready program. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to come forward? Mr. Carr? Welcome.
Bill Carr, 316 Indian Springs Road. I just wanted to congratulate you all. I was a member of the Neighborhood Balance Committee and recall all the meetings we had, and now look what's about to happen with your hard work. And I think that's great, and I think it's going to make a difference. At the same time, you have another tool you're thinking about, and that's the proposal that Natalie presented today. The bank, C&amp Bank, is very excited to partner with the city should you choose that. We saw how many people we had today here because we take it seriously, and we want to be an absolute dedicated partner with you. 2 observations. 1, please reach out to the College of William and Mary and then also to the Williamsburg Community Foundation to see if they can also contribute some money at whatever level. That multiplier effect, if it were to be $900,000 each, 3 times 9, $2.7 million would make all the difference in the world. And also, if it does come from the Community Foundation, that's a tax-free contribution that could be dedicated to the Community Foundation, which in turn can fund their $900,000 or whatever. The other thing I want to share with you is just real quick. I've been on board with C&amp for about 7 months, and I am very pleased and didn't know how active they are in the community, as expressed here recently, and then also what their capabilities are. We are eager to work with the city in other areas, and that's something I'd like to explore over time when the certain opportunities come up. We are located and headquartered in Stonehouse. That is our headquarters. I think we're the only bank that is that local with the headquarters. The president, CEO of the bank, lives here in this community. And I, as working in the corporate area of the bank, I live, as you know, downtown. And we are just, again, very excited and want to get to work with you. Quick factoid or news. We just heard from one of our neighbors that her house is going to come on the market maybe this week, 306 Indian Springs, Paula Kaz. And it's a very nice home. And I was just thinking, boy, if we were to have this home ownership program cranking right now, that might be an opportunity. It might be too quick, I don't know. But I think that the prospects are very, very good. Lastly, the mortgage team had to leave early because they're heading down to Dominican Republic for their sales leadership and award trip. So that's why they had to cut out early. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Would anybody else like? Mr. Wilson? Welcome. Welcome back.
Robert Wilson, 22 The Palisades. Contrary to the belief of some members of the council, I'm not against every program that you propose. The Rent Ready program is one of them. I think I support it. You know, I have a little concern that we don't create a backdoor avenue for short-term rentals. So hopefully we take a look at that and make sure that by pulling this out and creating a separate program, we don't allow Airbnbs and that type of thing. And when looking at it, I'd err on the side of the students. You know, I think residents and students seem to share the same goal. We want to kind of live in peace, right? And students that are treated fairly by fair landlords generally are going to behave fairly and reasonably. So I think it's probably in the city's best interest to try to, you know, give it a go, do it a beta program, whatever, and try the Rent Ready program. With respect to the C&amp, I think there's just a lot of questions about that thing that are open. Financially, you know, what are the fees? How much comes out in fees? Who pays it? Who pays the marketing costs? Last thing you want to do is read in the Williamsburg Independent or the Williamsburg Watch that only 60% of your $900,000 went into mortgages, right? So I think it's imperative that we understand, you know, the financial structure of how this is going to work. Is it going to be a closed-end fund? Do you put $900,000 in, you issue 4 or 5 mortgages, that exhausts the funds, and you have to wait till they sell the house and replenish it? Or is it going to be more an open end where you issue mortgages, they're then sold to investors, which replenishes the funds from the sale of the investors, so you have kind of a rotating benefit that maintains that ability to issue mortgages on the funds. So I think just a lot of questions still. There was kind of an ambitious timetable, nice presentation, like that. But I think there's a lot more questions that need to be answered and resolved before we go down that road a little bit. So thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to come forward? Seeing none, I'll close the open forum, and I don't believe we have closed session.
No closed session.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. McKay?
Ms. Williams.
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey.
Aye.
Mayor Pons.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent.
Aye.
Ms. Kernshire.
Aye.
We're adjourned.